transparency and accountability by publishing his affairs?
No doubt. I think is available even via, because I know that even within the legislature there are committees on judiciary who supervise these things, really. So, but I was saying, if you place it side by side, the funding of the judiciary vis-a-vis the executive, we have seen many state governments, state governors who are charged to court for embezzlement of funds. How many heads of court have you found? You understand? So really, if you put it in that perspective, you have seen that because really the funding has the needs outweighs the funds they get. There's really little or no room to play with the funds. But that is not to say that there should not be transparency, there should not be openness. So really, the pressure is there. So from the pressure point perspective, you will see that the funding is really grossly inadequate. And if you place it side by side, even the funding with other arms of government, like the legislature, for example, you will see that really there is an urgent need for the judiciary to be properly funded.
I want to round up with this question. What, in your view, is the major damage that this inadequate funding of the judiciary is causing to the nation?
First, because of that inadequate funding, you do not get the best brains to go to the bench, to aspire to be. Because of the operating environment, you see that the judges' performance will not be there will not be maximum output. For example, a judge is sitting and there's no light. There's really not much you expect within that circumstance. A judge is sitting and he has 20 cases in a day and the courtroom is choked and congested. The first thing he wants to do is to decongest the court by asking people whose cases are not going on, and then many people will just take the opportunity of that seeming chaos to request for an adjournment, which is not good for our economic development. It's not good for investors. It's not good for the image of the judiciary. Because of the low funding, you see that, like I said, I made reference to the work tools. Judges still write longhand, maybe not due to the fact that the need is not there. The need for verbatim recorders, they are installed in some courts, but the costs keep growing, and the needs to even maintain this equipment are there. So if you look at it, generally, you will see that the image of the judiciary, of course, if you walk into a courtroom, for example, that's not even a rocket science. If you go to federal court, for example, you'll be shocked that some of the courtrooms that some of the judges sit on, and you imagine a foreigner walking into those kind of courts, and then you respect the judiciary. So the image is, we need to do something more drastic. But we see the cost. If you follow the Oscar Pistorius case, for example, as near as South Africa, you see the courtroom and you'll be impressed. Not that the judges are more brilliant, but you see that we should have such courtrooms everywhere. Not even, well, you can make a case, federal court, maybe to an extent, is now getting obsolete. The Supreme Court, in terms of the courtroom environment, is becoming even smaller and smaller. Indeed, there was this case of the CJ and having to give a directive that if SANs do appear, they appear with a maximum of 5 juniors, because he was complaining that litigants come and stand. And some of the what led to that was the fact that the courtroom was becoming smaller and smaller. Then when we were young at the bar, the courtroom was like too large, a football field. But now, with more lawyers coming in, more cases being handled, of course, it becomes obvious that the courtrooms, if the courtroom cannot be enlarged, then the junior lawyers who follow the senior lawyers will be reduced so that the courtroom can take all. But it would have been an unnecessary pronouncement if the courtroom is large enough to take everyone. So if you take it from that standpoint, you will see that also there's need for more funding. There's need for the judiciary to be taken care of It's the judiciary that all of us run to, the executive, even when even the legislature, in everything, in family, domestic disputes, in economic disputes, it's the courtroom that destabilizes. So within that context, it's an institution that should be cherished and protected and made to function optimally.